I would like each one of you to give me what short, actionable tips, 1 minute or less, on key issues that bother everyone. First, on dealing with malware, Mr. Lok.
Thanks, Raju. During this period, we all don't want to be immobilized by ransomware. Yeah, so we need to prevent threat vectors, secure the attack surface. For a start, you may want to check out sites like BitSite that gives an overall score of your organization current security posture, and they do give details on any potential exposure to malware or botnets. Right, just a snapshot. Secondly, have a secure access strategy for your staff devices. If you haven't got one, especially the SMEs, right? There's cloud-based SASE solution. SASE stands for Secure Access Service Edge, or even deploy MDM. These are quick to deploy, doesn't really need additional hardware. You may want to go to IMDA website. There's security SaaS solutions there. Some are even funded under PSG. Thirdly, get an endpoint protection service or even consider endpoint detect and response solution. Besides protecting, you want to be able to detect and respond to any attacks. Fourth, have a proper backup. Last but not least, again, the weakest link, educate staff on phishing email or even SMS messages, yeah? No public Wi-Fi and change their home router password. Thank you. Over back to you, Raju.
Thank you, Mr. Lok. Second, service level agreements. Do enterprises need to revisit them, Mr. Sandeep?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, this is the time when SLAs get tested, right? The response time, the resolution time, availability, all of these things come under SLAs. And most of the time when we talk about SLAs, they generally look backwards, which is how is my infrastructure, my network, my cloud, or my outsourcing partner delivering those SLAs. And I think what I would suggest is, of course, you will have to think about what SLAs you may revise with the providers to your enterprise, but also look at the SLA that you've promised to your end users and customers. At this time, you also have to think about what are the SLAs that you may have to rebalance with your end users and your customers, because the end user who was picking up the phone and calling you is not going to pick up the phone and call you because they know that they may not get a representative on the phone. So what is your SLA for alternate channels? Set up the SLA for email, set up the SLA for a live chat, set up an SLA for an Autobot that you would have developed. That's one. And also, if you're in the business of delivering product, or then what is the SLA for you to for your end customers to think about when and how they will get the information, how the delivery will happen, when the delivery will happen. So it is time to reset SLAs. It may sound that you're pushing back, but that's the reality. And you should not only set up the reset or reestablish the SLAs with your backend providers, but also reset some of the expectations in the SLAs with your customer or the end user.
Thank you, Mr. Sandeep. Third, workload migration between clouds. Should enterprise do it or shouldn't they do it? Mr. Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Raju. I mean, I think relatively straightforward question here and kind of a straightforward answer from me. I think number one, absolutely, given the situation we are in now with COVID and obviously the rapid digitization, now is actually a really good time to do workload migration, whether it's between clouds, whether it's from on-premise to the cloud. But the caveat that I would put forward there is that if you are going to do something of such a scale, it's really important to have a simple yet actionable plan, right? We need to be clear, why are you moving clouds? Are you gaining resilience? Are you gaining security versus what you had previously? Are there new business capabilities you didn't have before? The tools you need to do it, the effort you need to do it. The big one, which I usually get day to day, is moving cloud going to be cheaper, right? These are sort of the obvious benefits. Maybe to hopefully help it make a little bit real, I think where I've also personally seen a lot of discussion about workload migration from cloud vendor A to cloud vendor B is actually less about infrastructure, but also more about the ecosystem that it does entail. As an example, from a Google standpoint, whether our customers are working with us to have applications on Android, on Google Play, they use YouTube, they use a tremendous amount of Google Ads, Google Maps, G Suite, and then of course cloud. These are great reasons for very large, far-reaching organizations to so-called move to Google because they use the entire ecosystem. That being said, of course, Google's ecosystem isn't the only ecosystem, and I do, of course, want to try and be fair. For example, other organizations are developing heavily on .NET, and they are going to continue developing on .NET. They use Office 365. They may potentially have using Active Directory as their primary directory service for their suite of applications. And so for many other good reasons, other cloud providers may say, hey, this is where we're going to move to because the ecosystem makes sense to us.
Thank you, Brian. Fourth, public, private, or hybrid clouds. Mr. Guna.
Arjun, I think there's not going to be a choice between a public, private, or hybrid. I think every customer is going to have a mix of both or multiple. In fact, I think it's going to be a hybrid multi-cloud. Like what Brian said, everyone's going to be using Gmail, everyone's going to be using Zoom, everyone's going to be using maybe Workday or SAP. Everything is going to be in a multiple cloud. It's not going to have a single cloud platform. Will it be all on public cloud? Not likely. Most customers would have something on private, which is your on-premise, and something on the public cloud. And depending on what's cheaper or your preference for certain tools or applications sit on one particular cloud, you would put something on AWS, something on Google, something on Azure, or even something on IBM Cloud. So you would have actually a combined environment. So the key thing to consider here is that whatever technology that you use, work with, in a way, the lowest common denominator if you can help it. Go cloud native, put things on containers, run things like OpenShift, so that you can deploy applications on your premise on OpenShift, or by the same time move things to cloud very easily. At this moment, you want to scale up because you need to ramp up quickly, move things to public cloud on any cloud provider, and then as long as you keep it on a container platform or you put it on a open platform, it's very easy for you to move between cloud platforms, right? So you can put things on Google now and then move to IBM or vice versa. That flexibility is important. So it will not be one answer. It will basically be multiple hybrid cloud kind of environment.
Thank you, Guna. Finally, last word for the end user. Between security and latency, enterprises should give more priority to which one? Mr. Ramesh.
So I feel that it's about achieving the right balance. It's not one versus the other. Organizations should make sure that upfront they define the security posture of what is the right posture for the business that they are in. So obviously a retailer may not want to have the same level as a bank, for example, right? Or vice versa. So you need to make sure that your security posture is defined upfront. You understand what you are willing to compromise, and then agree upon the risk associated with each one of them. Second is, I think we need to make sure that you define appropriate security policies upfront and ensure that you have the right technology to enforce the security policies that you have defined. Third is, I would say that make security integral to your entire life cycle. Security was in the past perceived as a blocker and as someone who slowed things down. Now with the design of having security by design, privacy by design, and having this concept of moving from DevOps to DevSecOps, where the barriers between the three different organizations, which in the past were three different organizations, like development, security, and operations, now all of them are coming together and working on the problem. Finally, I would say that the weakest link is still the human error, and you need to make sure that you conduct appropriate training and making sure that the appropriate efforts have been made to make sure that people don't phish and so forth. And there is a adequate importance and focus given to that particular area. So I would say finally that it's about the balance. Make sure that you pick what is right for your organization, and then back it up with the right technology.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. That brings us to the end of